we want to do a quick conversation about how this ecosystem has evolved. And specifically, a lot of themes that we've seen the last few years. We want to reflect on that and understand kind of how things are moving ahead. And what I want to specifically talk about is how DeFi has changed and what we've learned in the last few years and what we're excited about in the future. And for this, I want to bring on Stani, who's co-founder of Aave and Lens, to share a few of his insights over the last few years. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Stani on stage. All right.
GM.
BD. Well, Stani, I am super excited to welcome you here because you've almost been to every single ETHGlobal Hackathon ever. And that's, one, amazing because you've been part of this whole ecosystem from its initial foundings. Not just ETHGlobal, just Ethereum itself. And what I want to spend the next 10, 15 minutes on is talking about how things have changed. Let's start all the way at the beginning. How did you get the idea of Aave, and how was Aave started? Or ETHLen, as I used to know it.
Yeah, been quite a long journey, and it's actually very fascinating to be here now after a few years and seeing the community grow. These hackathons used to be very small. It was just basically me and Kartik. No.
I remember a few years ago we did the world's biggest Ethereum event as a hackathon, and it was only 400 people.
Yeah, so it's grown quite substantially. So it's super exciting to see like how Ethereum, or even like beyond Web3 community, has been growing, specifically the developer community. And very early, what was fascinating for me is that if you think about blockchain and what we're trying to solve, I personally tried to solve kind of like a smaller challenge of being able to use a crypto asset as a collateral to unlock liquidity as a use case. But what I noticed, what got my interest is that blockchain and Web3 is something where you can solve challenges globally. So you solve something for someone, but it can be applied to everyone. It's basically a way to create democratic software, borderless, that doesn't take into account the background. So you can create like a very neutral software that can help people across globally. And that was something very appealing to me. And I think crypto in general had this kind of like perception as well, and got me in the first place to build something interesting. And finance, I've been always a finance geek, and seeing programmable smart contracts was something that got me excited to actually build the very predecessor ETHLend before Aave.
What was DeFi like 5 years ago?
Well, back then there wasn't DeFi. So there was one decentralized exchange, and the kind of like idea of what if you could actually trade against smart contracts, and they have specific rules, and you can create orders without giving custody of your funds.
Let's talk about EtherDelta in case somebody remembers.
Yeah, there was probably EtherDelta and something else, Kyber.
Radar Relay.
Radar Relay.
Bancor.
We met someone from Radar Relay today, which was very strange because there is a lot of projects and people in the space. Even these projects, they change and evolve, but you see people staying in the space, which is quite amazing at the same time. But it was very small. So over the years now, I've seen decentralized finance grow substantially, even peaked, I think at some point, over 200 billion worth of value locked across different smart contract infrastructures. I think Aave peaked at 28 billion or something. So substantially grown quite a lot. It's still small compared to finance in general, but for us, a bunch of kids building a future of finance. That was quite amazing.
From what you initially wanted Aave to be and what it is now, do you feel like you accomplished the mission? How has it changed? How does it differ from your original vision?
Well, the original vision was just democratizing finance, providing everyone access, and mainly the same equal opportunities. So that has been always the vision of what we want to do, increasing financial and also social participation. And looking back now, I think we've been able to achieve some sort of kind of like success in our community. I think kind of like the game isn't over yet, because I just feel that DeFi has so much potential. It's just for me, when I talk about DeFi, I usually think about DeFi as just finance. It's just better, faster, stronger finance. And I think that's the mindset you have to think about it if you want to build beyond our community. So I think the path has been right for the Aave protocol, especially because it's now decentralized, it's governed by the community, so anyone from here can become a delegator, create a delegator platform, and become a kind of like a protocol politician. Or you can, as a developer, contribute directly to the protocol and improve it. And I think that's a big part of decentralization. So I think we're in the right path.
That's kind of interesting, because I feel like we've seen DeFi go from nothing to something. I mean, forget different primitives, but we didn't have stablecoins until a few years ago. Like, we remember this space before stablecoins existed. And you kind of saw everything to the peak of DeFi summer, and then a lot of things happened. Good old times.
I miss those yields.
Well, let's not forget COVID in that same window. But do you feel like interest in DeFi has gone down?
In terms of like the sentiment, I would say not necessarily. No, I think that I meet more people that are interested in decentralized finance. Something that has changed, especially over the past maybe couple of years, and especially the past year, is that DeFi is no longer the entry point to Web3. That basically means that we onboard more developers and more users into the space that doesn't necessarily come from the DeFi perspective. That might be the creator economy, that might be through DAO participation, that might be through Web3 social. But that's actually a good thing, because you might onboard from one particular area, but you might then gain interest in DeFi. And I've seen this happen, also in the space. And I would say that building DeFi has changed a lot. So there's not anymore kind of like a gap filling. So especially like few years now, we've been filling different kinds of gaps in Web3. We're looking what kind of transactioning we have in traditional finance, and try to kind of like create similar, maybe a bit more improved ecosystem, or improved protocol. Maybe it's like swapping or lending, and have it in DeFi. And I think now it's just kind of like a different time to build, where you have to build in a way where you have to figure out like what is the thing that actually suck in traditional finance.
It's a big list.
Yeah, it's a big list, but it's also a challenging list, because whatever isn't working, and you have to figure out that how you can actually use blockchain technology, smart contracts, everything that we have, and actually improve those challenges. And I think the traditional finance has a lot of things that can be solved with the blockchain, with the transparency, the accountability, and also the immutability, and everything can be programmable. So I just think that it requires a bit more effort, which is a good thing, because whatever you're going to build, if it's going to move the needle, it's going to move a lot. And that will bring new users into the space. So times are just a bit different now.
Got some fans here. Well, That's what I love about hackathons. It's you get to keep things just real, and sometimes a little bit interruptive. But that's an interesting point, because I think a few years ago, kind of the narrative, but also just what we saw was DeFi is the killer app for Ethereum, and we saw programmability to finance. But now there's so many other entry points. DAOs exist. We have NFTs as a massive thriving ecosystem. You talked about social, gaming. All of these things are bringing different kind of audiences in. And of course, that creates a lot of distraction for even developers because they have too many choices. But one thing I'm kind of curious about is all kind of the common complaints we heard about DeFi back years ago, we thought it would be fixed when L2s show up. Fast transactions, no gas or cheap gas, or you can cancel everything without a penalty, all these things, but we still really see a massive spike in DeFi. Why do you think that is, or what's missing?
I think also that Layer 2 is exciting innovation, both optimistic and ZK EVMs. It's about scaling Ethereum, and especially with today's Ethereum prices, and the more users we're going to onboard, we're going to have more challenges with scalability. So the idea of being able to transact outside of Ethereum and periodically settle and use Ethereum as a finality layer is going to bring a lot of space to build. And I think it's quite early still, because even optimistic rollups, they've been around for I guess like a year, maybe a year and a half in total.
A year at least on mainnet, and even longer.
Yeah, it's really. I know 1 year in DeFi is like 5 years, but like it's still very early. And I think it's the first time we actually are starting, because like when people say that there might not be things to build in DeFi, I actually see more and more people coming to me and talk about DeFi, and it creates this kind of like excitement around like what could be the next things to build. And I usually talk about payments.
Let's talk more about those. Yeah.
Yeah, I talk about payments quite a lot because Bitcoin in its infancy was supposed to solve peer-to-peer transactioning. Ethereum came and you essentially had a virtual computer on a blockchain, and you can make programmable finance, which is amazing. We build exciting things and scalable protocols. And now with Layer 2s, we can actually go and tangibly solve the payments infrastructure, because you could actually transact in scale. And maybe it even requires like a Layer 3 or some sort of additional solutions.
Off-chain, yeah.
Exactly. But that's like a very important problem to solve, because we're all crypto users, and everyone has a wallet here. Everyone has an NFT, and even I'm pretty sure everyone has Pepe coins as well. But no one actually is able to pay ongoing basis with crypto, and that's a big problem, because we're the builders and we're the developers, and the very first thing that we try to solve with blockchain, we really haven't been able to do so. But now we actually have a tangible choice. So whoever actually goes and starts to think about those use cases, and also beyond that, not just building applications, but figuring how we bring businesses on chain and actually use decentralized finance, is going to be valuable. And I think that goes back to my experience when I was 15, 16, building websites. And at that age, when you have some server costs, you want to offset them some way. You either add Google Ads, or then you add payment methods like credit card payments for something. And Stripe was very popular then, and it create this kind of like a certainty that you can actually trust the internet payments. And effectively what happened is that any business, any part of the world could, well, not any part of the most of the parts of the world could actually have a global distribution and end user client network. And that was huge. That basically brought all the businesses and a financial layer into the internet. And PayPal did, before that, even incredible job as well. And I really love the $20 liquidity mining that they had. as well. So it just showcases like how early we are, and if we're able to solve the payment parts, the payment infrastructure, that is something where it brings not just end users but businesses into Web3 on-chain economy.
I think that payment obviously is an excellent point. I mean, 13 plus years later, after Bitcoin with the title of peer-to-peer exchange, we haven't been able to make that commonplace. But what I took away from what you just said is, seems like we have now all the primitives we need, but we haven't seen those primitives being used in ways that find meaning to end consumers. Is that a fair assessment, or do you feel like we still need a few more primitives that exist in traditional finance, or maybe more in DeFi, that are preventing us from building more useful things?
I think we have everything we need. We just basically need to kind of like move from kind of like building back-end DeFi to build front-end DeFi, meaning that we're using these amazing protocols that we have, and starting to think actually like what the experience and the flow looks like on the end user side, and how we bring closer Web3 for everyday users, or maybe settlements between businesses. So I think that definitely exists. And another thing that is very exciting and valuable is that we've built interesting credit system on chain, but it's based always on digital collateralization, and in most cases over collateralization. So something that we could actually move also forward with is trying to figure out how to build a credit network or network of credits. Yeah, I think that was the idea. So what it means is that you could actually use blockchain in terms of like registering different kinds of payment data, repayments, credit scoring, and evolve a bit from the layer of over-collateralization and start building trust networks. And some of them will fail, you know, but it's totally fine, because most of the things in life and businesses and startups fail anyways.
A lot of trial and error.
Exactly.
So we want to see more useful payments. We want to see a better way of thinking about credit systems. I guess I'm curious on, with all the excitement we're seeing on account abstraction, zero knowledge proofs, do you feel like there's an obvious thing that we can do to integrate those types of things in DeFi applications? Yeah, and I think that's where if you're able to prove different kinds of different sort of information about yourself, when you can actually use your identity, your knowledge, your experience, and produce data, and prove that as well on chain without exposing the exact data as well, you can actually start building interesting use cases around validation of let's say, trustworthiness, credit scoring as well. So those things are very valuable for the economy, because most of the people, they do start with a very low kind of like equity, which means that if you want to empower and use blockchain for empowerment, and especially with DeFi, you have to go beyond the collateralization, because that infrastructure works pretty well. It's fine, but you will have to find components. How do you empower by getting and providing more access to credit? And to be honest, you could actually build a pretty damn good credit scoring and credit network on chain, because even if you move today from one country to another, your credit scoring doesn't passport. So it just showcases how clunky the existing system is, and it isn't borderless and global. And I think there's a lot of ways to fix that with DeFi. So you can add elements of privacy too there, because that helps a lot more integrations with Web 2 or just traditional finance and DeFi. And I feel like that's also a bit underexplored. Yeah, especially because I think even the privacy itself could bring more people. But I think it's very valuable that DeFi started as a more like a public infrastructure. So not just the markets are public, but also the addresses and balances, and that kind of like created a lot of credibility, auditability as well, and that creates a bit better equitable finance. But down the line, you will have to add more privacy to DeFi, and solving that aspect is super valuable. I absolutely agree. I want to come back to the primitives again. You are building a stablecoin, which has some unique features, and I guess I'm curious about what Go is, why did you decide to build it, and how does it work?
Yeah, Go is it's an over-collateralized asset where effectively it's based on a model where we've used already on ETHLand on the over-collateralization. We're using it. We use the same model at Aave, and where any reductions of the collateralization value will get rebalanced by liquidation. So it's a proven model. And what's interesting about Go is obviously you can mint it against your assets that you are supplying into the Aave protocol, meaning you can also earn on your collaterals while you're minting and borrowing Go. But I think regardless of the technicalities, there's so much information there. And Jess from our team made a very exciting workshop today on the technical specifications. But I think one of the biggest things that differentiates Go from anything else is the vision. And I think Go probably will be very accessible asset in the DeFi ecosystem. But the idea is to actually get Go into more payment layers and figure out those different kinds of applications and use cases where Go could actually empower and become a payment layer for internet. And I think down the line, as Go gets adoption and there's more scalability, also I believe in this concept of having choice as a user. So I frequently talk about being a liquid citizen on chain, so where you have a lot of choices, you can move your funds from one protocol to another, and there's really minimal risk of doing that because everything is based on very proven infrastructure. So as an end user, you kind of have the choice of selecting not just consumer applications, but also like infrastructures, payment rails, stable coins, communities, essentially, that represent your values and are backing the things that you appreciate in life. And I call it kind of like going beyond the face value. So if all these stable coins are pegged into the same tracker value, going beyond that means that actually you could track, because of the traceability and the transparency, which of these stable coins are contributing more to reduce, for example, global warming, or funding young entrepreneurs because it's on chain, and basically selecting that kind of a payment currency on your day-to-day activities. And by your choice, you can kind of like as a bigger group of community move the needle more. So I think that the vision part of getting into payment rails and helping Go is effectively a tool. It's you, the builders, that can actually build something tangible where more people have access to Go and have value in these use cases.
That's a really good way to think about that. I think people are already choosing different front ends or protocols based on what they like and communities, but extending that to money is something that you just didn't think you could do before.
I actually had an idea once that we should do at Aave like 15 different front ends and let the users just choose, and because that gives more optionality end of the day.
Well, I think social kind of peers through everything eventually.
Yeah.
That's basic. Well, let's try to talk about something that's more practical for founders here, or people thinking about going into DeFi. You kind of said that people are not coming to you more and more, which is interesting because from the surface, it looks like we're not seeing too many DeFi launches, or the things we're seeing is more version upgrades from things that are already out there. So I'm kind of curious on if somebody's thinking about building in DeFi, what should they not do?
I think they shouldn't rush. For many reasons. One, for sure, is that if you're building DeFi, it might be very mission critical software. So a good example is that if there's a rocket that doesn't make to the moon, or let's say to the orbit, that might be 100 million, 150 million issue. If a substantially high DeFi protocol gets exploited, that could cost billions. So some sort of some sort of kind of like granularity of risk is important, risk management. And also, I will not go too fast because you have to take time to build things. But especially if you're gonna think of becoming a founder, there's a lot of new things that you're gonna learn. And spending time and learning is probably the most valuable thing to do. And I think in my early days, things were moving super fast, and I kind of like regret that I didn't try to slow down and take more time in learning a lot of the things I'm doing now.
Do you have kind of frameworks for how you think about what idea to pick and how you should think about starting something now in 2023 in DeFi?
A lot of people come and in terms of like showing kind of like proposing improvements into existing infrastructure. So creating a slightly better AMM or slightly better lending protocol or slightly better stablecoin. But I really recommend to do something that is very contrarian and maybe even isn't really a marginal improvement on the existing DeFi ecosystem, but actually something that is very even risky. But if it works, it really proves something. It actually like can actually prove some new use cases as well. And also, good advice is that you should ship. I would not say ship slowly, but shipping in a way that
helps you kind of prove
frequently
the hypothesis. Oh, I see.
Like frequently, but small updates will be the good idea. Small updates.
Small updates. That's just incremental.
Incremental
progress, but not incremental ideas.
I usually say that like the best case is to ship every week something out, even something small. Like you wanna leave Friday night your computer by getting something out, and probably by Wednesday by Saturday it's already broken. But who cares? It's you're doing it also for fun. And if your app isn't breaking once a day, you aren't shipping fast enough. That's another lesson I have.
Sometimes, don't do that instead of security. Security matters. Let's add a big asterisk there. Front ends can break.
And testnet.
In testnet, that's fine. Well, I think that's a wonderful note to end on. Stani, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And feel free to grab him later for tickets to Rave.
Yes.